Okay, my name is Kismeteer, and I am recording this for Newbeans, and I forgot to hit record. So let's go ahead and start over. I'm so sorry, guys. Right now, we are in BGMZ off the burning pings right now. What a ping is a point in space off the gate that you can warp to. Right now, I've asked you guys to burn pings, and right now, there's a couple people who kind of failed miserably. Um, they have just slow boated up the gate, people in the cormorants. You guys are just staying near the gate, so that's not fantastic. Anyway, you can also warp to people remotely, so you can feel free to warp to me right now if you want. Right now, we are looking at the Sabre fit that I prefer. We prefer the Sabre because it is the fastest and it can have a decent tank, and it can also go ahead and do some long range guns against small stuff. Um, there are other fits out there if you want to go ahead and fit stuff. There is the Heretic is good if you want a probe launcher on it. If you need an armor one, I recommend an armor one actually because you can tank it better for armor so it can get reps, but not enough for it to have it live most times. It's not fast enough. It could, its top speed is like 1400. The Sabre starts out at with my skills 474 meters per second, and it can go ahead with the prop on. It's almost 3K. It's not quite 3K, but it's almost 3K. And with boosts, it can go ahead and get up to 4K. Yep, it's really close to 3K, so you just call it 3K. It's not fast enough to catch a lot of inties, but it's fast enough to catch almost everything else. So um, the fit that I particularly use, if you guys can open that up, uses the most important thing, of course, is the probe launcher, the sphere launcher. That can go ahead and fit in warp disruptor probes. This is the only ship that can fit this module. These modules leave a bubble behind in space. I'm going to go ahead and drop one now. That basically prevents people from warping. As you can see, it goes ahead and floats in space in 2 minutes. You're going to go ahead and see this thing disappear. It is going to go ahead and it uses one of my ammo. I can hold 3 at any given time in my probe launcher. This will prevent us from warping across it. So like if I try to warp down to the gate right now, I'm above it. It's going to go ahead and say, I can't enter warp because the warp disruptor is intersecting your path. You're going to get messages like that if you try and warp to it. Realize it will also pull you out of warp. I see that someone's capturing our stuff, but that's fine. So it can go ahead and be very discouraging for an enemy fleet. Because it lives past your death, even your death can be useful at times, but it is better to live. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that kind of stuff. The second most important thing associated with the Sabre is the Microwarpdrive. I prefer the compact just because this thing is really CPU bound. CPU is going to be the biggest problem you have fitting these ships. And then after that, it's the hyperspatials. This is so you can go ahead and warp really fast. Getting into the correct place and where you're supposed to be is really, really important. And then finally, the idea of tank and speed. And then finally, the guns. Oh, and I forgot the cloak. The cloak is extremely important. So basically, if you had just probes, cloak, microwarpdrive, you'd be solid. That's fine for a Dictor. But everything else is kind of gravy. The guns, the reason we use the T2 guns is specifically so we can use a type of ammo called Barrage. Barrage operates at long range. So it basically can operate, at like 9K pretty effectively, 8K really, really well. So we tend to orbit things at 6,500 or 9K with your prop on, and it goes ahead and does a crap load of damage at that range. I don't know about crap load, but 150 DPS, which is pretty good for a frigate or for destroyer. That will go ahead and toast most interceptors trying to chase you. The things that will kill you in a Sabre are a Inti, some of the command destroyers, a lot of the other destroyers will go ahead and beat you because you're not set for damage. They are. If they're in blaster ships, just stay away from them. Do like 9K, scram them and hold them at bay if you can, and then just plinking them with barrage from long range. Anyway, so this is the ship that I prefer to use, and we also have a little bit of paste, and that's to go ahead and deal with any drones. It's now been 2 minutes. We can time this in our head, which makes it oh, that someone else had dropped a probe. Anyway, but we can go ahead and time that 2 minutes. And yeah, it's sure I can go ahead and link the fit again. Give me a second here. I should just put it in the. It's in my post as well. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and warp to the 1KC gate. Give me a second. I'm gonna just warp us there, and we're gonna go ahead and jump into 1KC. Okay, anyway, there are other fits out there. I'll let you guys figure them out. The Jackdaw can be really good DPS ship for solo roaming, but it's a lot of training just to fly the, not the Jackdaw, the, crap, what's it called? Flycatcher. Flycatcher is pretty good. It does pretty decent DPS, but it is not the Sabre. So I prefer this. The Eris is complete garbage, unfortunately. They should fix it. They have not. So that sucks. Okay, let's go ahead and let's talk about the rules of the bubble. So I'd like everyone to go ahead and warp to UJX. I'm going to warp your fleet. Give me a second here.
Warp drive active.
If you try and warp in a bubble, you'll notice that you were warping, and then some of you did warp. The rest of us stop speed completely where we are. So in this case, I've used a bubble to go ahead and stop some of us, including myself, so we can go ahead and catch and kill those people. Everyone who's in the bubble, go ahead and burn out of the bubble and go ahead and warp to the gate.
Warp drive.
The bubbles that you use can go ahead and drag you into things as well. Everyone go ahead and we're going to warp back to the gate. We're not jumping in. Oh, I just jumped in, of course, because I'm an idiot. So burn back the gate and then warp back to the Ansiplex. And just stop as soon as you hit the Ansiplex. The way the warp bubble works is that if you are within 500 kilometers of where a bubble is, you will go ahead and get stuck on the edge of the bubble at that 500 kilometer mark. The reason this is important is that you can go ahead and put bubbles beyond the 500 kilometer mark, and it will go ahead and not affect people. So sometimes you want a bookmark that's above more than 500 km off. We didn't get caught in the bubble because I put it out of line because I didn't burn down the gate like I was supposed to. So anyway, so you see that we were not in line with the gate, or we're not in line with the bubble, so nothing happened there. If we go ahead and warp to the sun, I'm gonna warp the fleet to the sun here. We're going to go ahead and try and get stuck in this bubble. In theory, I should be able to get us stuck in the bubble. Realize we have 2 minutes that lasts, so as long as I don't dock. As soon as I dock, the bubble will disappear. Go ahead. If you guys have questions, feel free to go ahead and interrupt me and ask your question, or just ask in chat. I'm going to wait for everyone to land. And then we're going to go ahead and warp back, and hopefully we'll get stuck in a bubble. Now you notice that when we warped to the beacon, we went ahead and landed within 2K of where we're supposed to land. The bubble ignores those mechanics. Now, as long as we initiated warp while the bubble is up, we will land where the bubble dictates. It does all the math early. And we missed the bubble. Anyway, blah. Okay, anyway, we'll go ahead and figure something out here. Everyone go ahead and warp over to the fort. I'll warp everyone over to this Fortizar here. We're going to do a little work here. The bubble specifically will go ahead and last as long as you are not docked. This is to prevent people exploiting. So if you notice here that if I go ahead and do a bubble up here, you cannot warp while inside this bubble. I'm sure many of you have experienced this. It's extremely aggravating when you don't want to be stuck in a bubble. I'm going to go ahead and dock now, and you'll notice as soon as I dock, the bubble disappears like right away. This can make for some very fun undock games, because you can go ahead and if you think people are going to attack you on your Fortizar, your Astra house, you can drop the bubble in the center, and then if you have caps stuck in the bubbles, you can go ahead and just dock, and then boom, it's gone. Realize a PDS will also kill bubbles. Bubbles can also be killed by 4 large smart bombs, I think 8 mediums, and maybe 13 smalls. So if someone has 2 large smart bombs, 2 cycles of 12 seconds total, we'll go ahead and clear all of your bubbles. The bubbles extend about 20 km. There's also one that is a focused one, and that focused one is, I think, 5K or something like that. No one uses those. And realize that the small and medium and large and Tech 2 large mobile disruptor bubbles are different because when they're deployed, they go ahead and make a permanent space. This is temporary. It only lasts 2 minutes and then it's gone. So when should you drop a bubble? The most common time, of course, is that when the FC calls for it. We're going to go ahead and take warp and jump into 1-KC.
Active.
Actually, no, sorry, we're already in 1KC. So what'll happen is that your FC says, "Hey, I want you to go ahead and stop that ship." Just hold, guys. We're going to go ahead and warp to here. So basically, he'll go ahead and say, "Hey, there's an enemy fleet here. Let's go ahead and get that enemy fleet." So that's the most common time. You'll see all of your Dictors warp off, immediately try and tackle. Half of them die right away because they're ready for them. And it's really easy to kill a Dictor if you're ready. Okay, I'd like everyone to set up a camp on this side of the gate. So pretend that you have someone coming in UTXJ. So go ahead in 1-KC. You're going to go ahead and set up a camp as if you're trying to catch someone. No bubbles for now. So the main thing that you want to do is go ahead and survive. If you survive, you're more likely to go ahead and be able to drop that bubble in the exact right place, able to go ahead and help the fleet. Now granted, you sometimes want to slow down fleets by drag bubbling them and stuff like that, prevent them from getting on the gate so fast. You want to do screen bubbling that prevents them from warping in on you. There's a lot of things they can do. So I am going to go ahead and add me to watch list. Go ahead and add me to watch list, and you guys are going to go ahead and try and tackle me as I get back to the gate. The advantage of the Sabre over most of the other ships is its speed and its tank. You guys are going to try and catch me burning back to the gate. No bubbles for now, okay? Let's go ahead and see how long it takes you guys to lock me. I went ahead and just double button that thing. So you guys got a scram on me. You got maybe a volley off, and then I was able to get back to gate already. So you can see how strong that is. Because a Sabre can bounce between a gate pretty indefinitely as long as they don't have like a Daredevil or Interceptor or, there's a lot of other small ships they could have. Hugin can be extremely damaging. But as long as they don't have certain ships, you can pretty much get back to gate on a regular basis. If they don't have bubbles, you can always escape. I'd like you guys, so what you do is you go ahead, and I'll type this out. You align, you go ahead and hit your cloak, you hit MWD, then you turn off MWD, then you uncloak when the MWD ends, and you warp. So in this case, I'm going to align to this fort. I'm going to go ahead and hit my prop mod and my cloak in the same cycle. You remember you can go ahead and use 2 items with Destiny. You'll notice that I am immediately cloaked, so you can't target me. So even if they have an insta-locker, they can't catch me. As soon as my Microwarpdrive cuts out, I go ahead, turn off my cloak, I hit warp, and then boom, I'm into warp. You are uncatchable if they don't have a Sabre. This applies especially to high sec and to low sec. Low sec, you got to more worry about them doing smart bomb tricks and stuff like that. But it is extremely powerful. Everyone, go ahead and get on the gate. Get on the gate. Get on the gate. We're going to have everyone go ahead and try this themselves. Realize this trick only works if you're coming from a complete stop. Sometimes it cannot be effective if you're trying to go a different direction. But never be afraid to go ahead and turn on your cloak and your microwarpdrive at the same time. You will only have that, you'll have that speed for a little while, but you'll have it, for a pretty decent amount. So it can help you escape when there's hostiles about. Everyone get on the gate. Okay, everyone go ahead and jump on into UJX. And then I would like everyone to go ahead and try this trick while warping to the Furzar if you have a cloak on. So go ahead and align first. Kick Cloak and MWD. Turn off the MWD. And as soon as the MWD ends, you turn off your cloak and then hit warp. And because you'll be at 3/4 speed, you should be away. That makes sense? Anybody have any questions about anything I've gone over so far? Note that this trick works with a lot of other ships as well. It only works with like a decently speedy ship with a decent align. So industrials doesn't work great. Realize you can use your prop mod to kick you into warp faster in capitals if you use a low, 500 MN, because it only lasts like 10 seconds, 12 seconds. ABs don't work as well for this trick. You need to have that speed and inertia to go ahead and carry you through. So, okay, so that is called the Microwarpdrive cloak trick. So when you should go ahead and use this? You should use this to go ahead and dodge gate camps. You should use this to go ahead and get eyes on things. Realize I am many times, if you guys have heard me, I'm usually like a lead scout. I'm usually scouting in a Dictor. A Dictor is extremely survivable. It can kill most small things. I can also cloak up. So if you think you're going to have a problem, a lot of times you'll just go ahead and cloak. So everyone go ahead and give me a second here.
Warp drive active.
So a lot of times also you want to go ahead and do what's called stop bubbling. So go ahead and warp yourselves to the gate, to the Anselblex here. Warp yourselves to the Anselblex here. You note that I just went ahead and split the fleet. You notice that 3 of them, 3 people are. Someone go link the system we went through, the BGM. I will link it, I guess. So the advantage of splitting a fleet like that is that this reduces their ability to wage war against us. Because they go ahead and get stuck in between there, you can have half the fleet in one place, half the fleet in another place. They can't warp directly to each other, so they have to warp off and warp back. You can also catch them as they're lining off a gate. You can go ahead and really do some damage, because once they have half their fleet there, I think we all know what happens to slow boys. They get killed. Realize that a lot of times I will go ahead and sacrifice my Sabre to go ahead and try and get a tackle, but it's rare. I try and make it rare. I did 5 in one day recently, and that was not worth it, but I was told by the FC, hey, go do this, and I went ahead and did it, and yeah, you pay the price. Realize that Sabres aren't that expensive. It's 65 mil for the hull, 20 mil for the fit, and you get paid, pay 6 mil for insurance, get 20 mil back on insurance, 80 for SRP. So you don't get quite what you put into it, but you get pretty close. Now realize that the bubble that I've put up is at a certain distance from this gate. You'll notice that it's at 60 or 70. That's kind of a magic number. If you go ahead and get it that's halfway in between being too far away, being too close. If you do it further away, I'll show you guys, I'll demonstrate this in a second. I'm burning off right now. You can go ahead and do what's called a drag bubble. So everyone go ahead and warp yourselves to the sun. Warp yourselves to the sun. Let me know when you guys are landed, sun. We are right now in UJX, and everyone is warping to the sun. And I'm going to try and do a drag bubble. Okay, let's go ahead and... Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. I'm trying to do a drag bubble, and I'm trying to go ahead and get into the right position. If you have really good spatial skills, Dictor, it's a big help for dictoring. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to basically go ahead and line up the sun, line up my ship, and line up the Ansiblex. So I can go ahead and have all three right in a row. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you start doing this, you can do it really reliably. Granted, it's sometimes difficult when you're being stupid like I am right now, but you know. Okay, go ahead and warp back to the Ansiblex. Warp back to the Ansiblex. Now this time I went ahead and misplaced the bubble. This time I went ahead and put it a little too far away. The disadvantage of putting it a little too far away is that now you can turn around and immediately warp to the Ansiblex. Unless I go ahead and put another bubble right here. And then if you're still there, I will go ahead and cloak. So by cloaking, I can go ahead and bubble the enemy fleet, stop them from going anyplace, prevent them from warping back. You note that if I put that 60 or 70, that would have given me more options, and I might not have done the second bubble. That second bubble can be extremely dangerous because people can land directly on you. There's a lot of danger associated with that. Realize that once your cloak is on, you basically have to wait for that fleet to leave to safely warp off. Now granted, they do leave you alone pretty quickly after that because they don't like having a Dictor cloak next to them, but you know, once your cloak is on, you're basically stuck there for a while. Never be afraid to use your cloak. Your cloak is your best friend for when things get hairy. If you're scouting and you jump into an enemy gang, just cloak up. Wait for the friendly fleet to go ahead and catch up. They might not be able to save you. They might be able to go ahead and decloak, but because they're decloaking, they're going to spend time and effort trying to catch you. And during that time, you might have friends show up. You can burn back to gate. You can burn someplace else. There's a lot of things you have available to yourself. Are there any questions about some of those? The difference between drag bubbling and stop bubbling. This was a drag bubble. It's on the far side of the object. A stop bubble is something that would be in front of the object. Now, at this point, the first bubble went down because that bubble was done like 25 seconds before this other one. I have 25 seconds to rebubble the enemy fleet. A lot of times I will drop two bubbles when I first get a good tackle, just so I can know when the first bubble is going to go down, and I will try and wait, you know, at least 20 seconds so I can go ahead and reposition. Now during fleet flights, it's not always the best to go ahead and stay right on field because you're going to die. You want to catch them at only certain points. You want to catch them when you first land. You want to go ahead and catch them when they are trying to escape. And you want to go ahead and catch them when they are chasing you. You want to stop them chasing our fleet. So if we're running away, you generally are going to go ahead and try and bubble at the beginning of the fleet and at the end of the fleet. And if you can survive between both, you're going to be really thanked by the FC. Now, be able to know how to catch up if you do lose your Dictor is extremely important. Sometimes getting caught up isn't always the thing. Realize that in local, you have the list of systems that you pass through. So if you look through the systems we pass through R10, BGM, 1-KC, UK, UJK. So you can kind of see the list of different places that we've been already. It's a really good way to go ahead and track where you've been so you can go ahead and trace your stats if you lose your Dictor. And generally, if you're playing Dictors, you don't play with clones, so just expect to lose your clone. There's also the idea of delay bubbling, which we went over a little bit already. If someone goes ahead and warps, as they initiate warp, and then you put up a bubble on them, they will stop and go to 0. This includes ships like covert ops, like bombers, like there's a lot of other ships that this happens to. The advantage is that is then they're going 0. You can go ahead and burn to them. You can try and get a lock on them. There's a lot of ways to go ahead and catch them after you've done a delay bubble. The way that works is that you go ahead and orbit the gate at 2500, which is like a default orbit. You go ahead and put it on your cloak, and you get ready to go ahead and bubble. If you think a hostile fleet might be inbound, a lot of times I will preheat my Microwarpdrive. That means turn on the overheat option on my Microwarpdrive, ready to use it if they do indeed land on me. Overheating your Microwarpdrive is going to help you escape faster if an enemy fleet lands on you and you need to escape fast. Realize you can only run it 3 times, essentially, 3 cycles before you burn it out. So and sometimes you can get 4, but basically assume you're going to get 3 times out of this, even with good skills. If you look at the Microwarpdrive, you can see under attributes how much hit points it has. You can see it has 40 hit points, and if it's doing 14 hit points 14.25 hit points each time, that's going to be after 3 times, that's going to be 45. So it's going to go ahead and be broken. You can get lucky, but just assume it's going to run 3 times. Now realize that we do carry paste. When I'm running my overheated Microwarpdrive, you can see my speed right now is 4200. If I go ahead and take heat damage on that thing, you can basically not use it for a little while and use it again 1 cycle. It won't do any damage. If it does get damaged again, realize that it only costs you 1 paste to go ahead and fix it. So if I go ahead and turn on my Microwarpdrive again, this time it's going to get damaged. You can see my speed and how fast I'm going. You can see I can get it up to 4K, so I can try and run down something, etc. I still didn't damage it. That sucks. But basically, this allows me to go ahead, and then you just need a little bit of time where you're not using your Microwarpdrive, and then you can repair it. Realize that because you're using T2 shields, you can't always repair them. They can get expensive to repair. Like for instance, my damage. No, it takes 4. So I just did damage to one of my shields, and it only takes 4 paste. And because I'm carrying 25 paste, don't carry more than 25 paste. Just increase the cost of your hull, and generally you're just not going to repair. Or at least I'm not going to anyway. Are there any questions about any of that I just went over? You are happy to answer. I'm happy to answer questions. No, you're right. So if you basically, so I can go ahead and demonstrate this if you want. Give me a second here. I'm trying to think the best way to do this. Let me go ahead and warp. You guys are all on that thing. Go ahead and warp. Everyone warp to the fort. Warp to the fort.
Warp drive active.
So yeah, the repair on my Microwarpdrive is 1 for the first group of damage. My Scrambler is 7. My shields are 4. So I should be able to go ahead and repair everything twice and still have plenty left over. Plenty of paste left over. So, or you can just go sit on a fort or Astra for a little bit. Okay, give me a second here. Of course I can't. Why would I be able to go ahead and do that? Give me a second here. Everyone go ahead and warp yourselves to the Anciblex. Warp yourselves to the Anciblex. Everyone warp themselves to the Anciblex. So you can see who initiated warp as soon as I said warp to the Insublex, and you can see who didn't. People are continuing to land inside the bubble, so you can see that we had a couple people warp late. 25 paste. I will link the fit again if you want. And once again, 30 bubbles, 25 paste, quite a lot of barrage, some Republic EMP, some fusion or cheap ammo. It can be whatever ammo you have flying around. It doesn't matter, really. I've been using fusion just so it's different than EMP. Is there any other questions?
Warp drive.
I did
active.
it badly because when you do it too far away, they can immediately warp to the object they were trying to warp to. So you want to be about 75 km. So if you're 75 km from an object, then they're halfway in between warping off and trying to burn to the gate. They usually, and that's the thing, is that people are stupid and will generally burn to the gate. And if they're burning to the gate, you can warp a fleet in on top of them. You can move your drag bubble so it's closer to your fleet. So you can drag your fleet into your new bubble. So it can be extremely flexible in that regard. So yeah, 150. Yeah, so 150, and you got to be careful too because you don't want to put it too close because sometimes they can just go ahead and angle off a little bit and are able to go ahead and warp right away. You want to make it as difficult to make that decision as possible. Any other questions about this stuff we've gone over? Okay, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about that. We went ahead and talked about other stuff. So we're going to go ahead and do what's called a perch now. Everyone go ahead and get into, let's go back into 1KC. I think that's 1KC. Yeah, everyone go ahead and warp yourself to 1KC.
Warp drive active.
Now, I have not made a bookmark to 1KC. Oops, I just realized we're too close. I can't do it there. So there's a way to go ahead and make a bookmark while you're flying that makes you a perfect perch every time. It's just a matter of timing, but knowing how this works can help you get a perch every single time, anytime you're warping to anywhere, as long as you can see it on your overview, on the selected items list. So we're going to go ahead and warp to F4K. Give me a second here. That's too close. We're going to warp to, give me a second. Okay, we're going to warp to XTJ.
active.
We're going to warp to XTJ. What you do is everyone go ahead and hit Control B. That brings up your bookmark things. And as soon as the distance to XTG says 12,000 km, hit Submit. Did everyone try that? As soon as you hit XTJ,
drive active.
or as soon as you get within 12 km, 12 km to 6K, or sorry, 12,000 km, 6,000 km, somewhere in between there is the butter distance. This allows you to make what's called a a long perch. Basically, it's a perch that allows you to go ahead and be very far away. You can see that Quinn did it very successfully. Preeb did it successfully. I did a really close one because I wanted to see how close I could get. If you do it too late, sometimes you could end up with a 60 km one, which is basically useless to you. You guys can warp that to us. The advantage of having one that is 500 meters away from the gate is that it is not affected by bubbles. Any bubble they happen to have on the gate, you'll be further than 500 km away. You will not be dragged in the bubble. So that's why having like a 4K perch or 2K perch allows you to go ahead and be really safe and check out a gate before you go there. That makes sense? So a lot of times during fleet battles, you're sitting off at perches. You're not being asked to go bubble someone. You don't want to, no one wants to move. A lot of times fleets kind of go ahead and just slug it out. So they'll just be, fighting it out. You're going to go ahead and let them fight it out. And you're going to go ahead and hang out at a perch. Realize that while wrecks get made, you can go ahead and make bookmarks. So generally, if someone's losing, you can go ahead and make bookmarks on their fleet. Realize that they burn very quickly. So everyone go ahead and warp to me. And I will show you how quickly people burn. Everyone go ahead and approach on me, Microwarpdrive on. We're in 1-KC. And you can take the Ansiblex in 1 BMG from Rio to catch up to us. Everyone put on their Microwarpdrive and catch up to me. So what a lot of times will happen is people will say, Dictors, drop your bubbles. But in this case, I'm going to say, Darius Walker, go ahead and drop a bubble. So I have started a timer of how long it takes a Ferox running 800 meters a second. We're going to assume they're kind of fast Feroxes. How long does it take a Ferox to go ahead and burn out of bubbles with an afterburner? So I went ahead and put an X when I started it. When he dropped the bubble on it at 0, this assumes, perfect bubbling, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and as soon as I think that they're safe to warp, I'm going to go ahead and hit X1. So you can see that took, 30 seconds. Okay. We're going to go ahead and try this again. This time I'm going to go ahead and increase my speed a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and assume we're flying Munins or Eagles or something, just a little bit faster. This time, Commander Stargazer, you want to go ahead and drop a bubble? So I put a Y in fleet. When that bubble went up, we're going quite a bit faster. We're going 1600 at this point. And we're going to be out of bubbles in about 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 11 seconds actually. So you can see how quickly ships move. What's interesting is that it can be so scary that there's a good chance that you can go ahead and not be able to go ahead and catch people. There is a chance that people are going to be burning so fast you're never going to be able to go ahead and catch them. So the example that I like to use is that if you have someone chasing after you and you scram them as they're chasing you, they'll fall behind unless they have like a interceptor or something like that. There is no one on this fleet now that can go ahead and catch me other than maybe the Crucifier. And the Crucifier I could kill instantly, so it's not a fair test. But this is an example of what happens. Even if you can warp to me, you can't catch me. So all the way at their back there, Dorsey, Quinn Dorsey, if you want to go ahead and get ready to warp to me, everyone can turn. You guys can burn off, or you can try and go ahead and catch me if you want. But the sheer speed of the Sabre, because you're doing 3K in a straight line, this makes it extremely hard to warp in on me. It makes it extremely hard to go ahead and just burn at me and catch up with me. If you overheat your prop mod, there's a chance you can go ahead and do it. But even if you put a bubble, even if you're close enough to get a bubble, I'm going to burn out of that bubble in about 5 seconds. So you can see that Darius tried to warp back to me. That didn't work. If you guys want to ping off someplace and try and warp in on me, you totally can. Commander Stargazer, as soon as he comes close to me, I'm just going to overheat my warp scrambler and go ahead and try and knock him off. This is why chasing down those kitey bullshit doctrines always fails, And realize that, Trace, I'm going to shoot you here a little bit. You can see that I'm not doing a ton of damage to you because you're in a Sabre, but you can see that I can do some damage from this range. So if you have something squishy trying to chase you, you can go ahead and dump them off. Once again, even if you can warp directly to them. So the people all the way at the back, go ahead and warp to me at this point. You can still see he's landing 10K off. He's landing 15K off depending on their warp speed. So Quinn, go ahead and warp to me. So they're landing 20 km off while I'm burning. This is the power of the burning. Now realize that a lot of times you'll just kind of wander into interceptors, and then those interceptors will try and call friends. So just remember to go ahead and scram the interceptors, burn away from them towards a celestial, turn on your prop mod, and then watch someone go ahead and put from their crucifier put their tracking disruptors so you can't kill them. That's pretty amusing, actually. Okay, everyone can go ahead and de-aggro. As soon as this scram is gone, though, you can notice that this cormorant is getting close at this point. As soon as my Microwarpdrive gets turned off, I am freaking dead. You can see how quickly you guys catch up. You guys could all scram me. I would never escape at all. Realize that a lot of time you get locked up as well, and then you can't cloak. That can be extremely damaging, especially if your Logi is trying to help you, because if you're locked, you can't do anything. So once you're scrammed, you're kind of hosed. So you immediately go ahead and control click on whoever's scramming you and try and scram them back and burn off and whatever. So anyway, you can go ahead and dual prop sabers, but it doesn't always work well. Are there any questions about trying to catch things, etc.? The next thing I think is the one I think you guys might have the most interest in. I'm going to drop a can here. Give me a second here. It's hard for me to select cans because I don't have it on my overview. We're going to pretend that this can is a capital. I even titled it, I'm a capital. I would like everyone to go ahead and orbit this thing at their preferred ranges. If you're not on the capital, go ahead and warp off and warp back to the capital. Remember, we made a couple on-grid safes. Everyone go ahead and orbit this capital at the speed and distance you think you should be doing this. So you're going to find the can, and you're going to pretend this is a capital, and you're going to be tackling it. You guys can delock me away. Everyone can delock us. Delock each other. Petrol, delock. Okay, great. So everyone go ahead and orbit the thing, and let me know when everyone go ahead and X up when you think you're at the correct orbit and speed from this can. Let me know when you guys think you're good. So I'm going to approach the can, and then we'll see who's at a good distance and who's not. So I'm at 0 at this can. I'll point out, Alea, you're way too close. You're currently 4K from the can. The disadvantage of being 4K from the capitals is they might have smart bombs. If they have smart bombs, they most likely have T2 larges. Those can go ahead and hit out to 500 or 5,000 km pretty easily. It's pretty common to have a smart bomb. They need 4 smart bombs, and they will kill your intercept or your Dictor, and they will kill your bubble. So your bubble will be completely useless. You are in a useless position. Petro, you're a little too far out. Commander Stargazer, Quinn, you guys are 16 km away. That is too far away to go ahead and be effective, because they can go ahead and burn 3 km the opposite direction, and boom, they're out of bubbles. The people that are in a really good position is Alec Estamir. You're the one who's right now the best, top of the class right now. You're at a magic range of 9K to 11 km. That's really good distance. Napster, you're really good. Quinn, you're really good. So you guys kind of get the idea. You want to be close enough that your bubbles are effective. Everyone who can drop a bubble now. So you can see we have really good coverage, and if this can was a capital, he wasn't going to go anywhere. But you can see right now, I just have to go ahead and burn a little bit so I can, I think one of these is 8K away. I can burn 2K and kill that bubble. There's a lot of ways to go ahead and kill off bubbles once you're, tackled like this. Now realize, because all those bubbles happen at the same time, they're all going to despawn at the same time. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll drop one extra one after all the other major bubbles have dropped to make sure it's going to be there when all the bubbles drop. So you're going to go ahead and see all the bubbles are going to disappear. My bubble will still be there. This is one of those tricks. Now realize that because you only can carry 3 in your launcher at any given time, you have to be extremely careful about using all your bubbles in your launcher and when you're going to do a reload. You can start a reload when you're cloaked, or you can start a reload when you're uncloaked, but you cannot reload while you're cloaked. So just make sure you're reloading while you're cloaked. You can also reload while you're taking a gate. So, but you have to start it before you take the gate. Okay, I would like everyone who has a cloak to go ahead and cloak up. Because the capital is bubbled down, you want to go ahead and get safe. Your safest place to be near it is this magic distance away from it and cloaked. You know it's not going to wander into you. You know it's not going to accidentally smart bomb you off. It might. People might end up decloaking. Everyone hit stop your speed. Hit control space to do a complete stop. Control space. You want to go ahead and stay cloaked near this capital. You then want to go ahead and find an align point out when the bubbles go down where you're going to go ahead and drop a bubble and burn out. We're going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and use this Stargate. So everyone can go ahead and pick the Stargate. That's where we're going to go ahead and line to. So what's going to happen, we're going to pretend all bubbles are down. You're going to align to the Stargate. You're going to go ahead and overheat your Microwarpdrive. You're going to align out. You're not going to hit warp. You're going to drop another bubble. Everyone go ahead and drop another bubble. Overheat your Microwarpdrive. And warp out to the gate when you can.
Warp drive active.
So I was in the dead center of the warp, and I was basically the second out. Granted, I was the one telling the instructions, so that's not surprised. But you can see all the other people who basically would have died if that was an actual capital, if that was an actual fleet on there. And I now have 2 paste worth of Microwarpdrive damage, so I'm going to repair that now. Everyone go ahead, and then the key is you warp back, and then you burn in a little bit, and you cloak up. A lot of times when you're dealing with a capital like that, you'll also go ahead and bookmark it. If you realize that there's a lot of things you can bookmark. You can bookmark in space when you're next to it, so everyone can go ahead and warp back to it now. Warp back to the can. I'll broadcast it so it shows up. I can't fleet warp you. But anyway, a lot of times you'll end up bookmarking next to a capital so you know this is next to this hostile cap. This is especially true when you're doing hot drops, is you can go ahead and bookmark asteroids, you can bookmark wrecks, you can bookmark corpses. So if you have unsuccessful dictoring attempts and they leave behind corpses, you can bookmark those corpses. You can't warp to corpses directly, but you can bookmark them. And almost nobody removes them from almost everyone removes them from overview. So it's a trick you can go ahead and use to go ahead and get to the correct place. Now, if this is a capital and he's well tackled, like he's in siege or something like that, we might just let him, all the bubbles go down. The bubbles should be going down in like 10 seconds, 20 seconds here, if my internal timer is correct. By the way, my MWD can also be repaired while I'm cloaked. So if I was sitting here cloaked, it could be replaced. Boom, all bubbles down, the thing's free. Congratulations, we lose. Unless it's in siege. If it's in siege, it's still sitting there. So if it's in siege, you can just go ahead and cloak up next to it, wait to bubble it when it, the pod drops, horror on it, shoot it once with your guns to go ahead and get on the kill. But, are there any questions about that? I know that I went over a lot of different topics there. Realize that if you're not feeling very effective, you can go ahead and burn a ping, and then you can just have dictors gather out there at those pings, ready to warp down when they think the bubblers are going to be dropping. As I said, a lot of times I'll drop 2 bubbles in short succession, so that way one goes down. As soon as I see that one drop, I know the other one's going to be dropping soon, so I can go ahead and have time to warp in, drop my bubble, and then get out. And once again, I'm going to preheat my overwarp drive before I'm going to do something dangerous. You kind of have to visualize, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. And it takes some practice. A lot of times, as I said, I will go ahead and record myself to go ahead and so I can get better, so I can say this is where I fucked up. because almost every time, that's what I love about Eve. You always know when you fucked up. I mean, like you could tell yourself, oh, and this is, and then the tape scratches to a halt, and someone says, and this is where he knew he fucked up. Because I can always tell that in when I'm doing dictoring, if I'm not having the FC telling me to drink bleach, which has totally happened. So I'm going to go ahead and make a bookmark out here. And then I'm going to call this my perch. And then I'm going to warp down to the capital. I'm going to put my bubble up, and then I'm going to get back to my perch. Realize that perch has to be at least 150 km away from where my bubble lands. So if I'm going to go ahead and drop a bubble here, which I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and burn out. I am vulnerable to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm vulnerable for 10 seconds there. If you can get a scram or a web on me in that time, I have 10 seconds to escape. And that was unoverheated. Overheated, it's more like 7 seconds. But you have to have it prepped. So that now we are at perches. We know our friendly fleet is shooting it, etc. We might have the FC tell us what to do. But if we're smart, we know what's going to happen. Friends, it's going to have friends show up. Let's say that they're going to come from that Fortizar. So if you know their friends are coming for the Fortizar, what you'll do is you'll go ahead and stop bubble them so they can't land ships that can rep it immediately. So I'm going to warp back to back to the capital, the fake capital we have. And I'm going to go ahead and burn towards where I think the hostiles are going to come from. A lot of times you might not know, but your FC totally will try and predict where they're going to come from and might have an educated guess where they're going to come from. Now you start with a bubble at the, so right about here or so. This is 50 km away. That'll put the enemy fleet 70 km away, but it's better to have them at 120 km away. So that way they are completely and utterly fucked. Because then they won't be able to get to them. So at this point, I'm 75k away. They're going to land 95k away if I bubble towards the Fortizar, which I'm not going to do right now. So you can prevent them from getting support. Are there any questions over the myriad of topics I just went over? Feel free to ask them, guys. It's better to ask stupid questions now than do stupid things in front of a fleet commander who gets really mad at you. So. Yeah. So the best way to learn this stuff is to just do it. You do it what's called screening bubbling. What this is called is screen bubbling. If I go ahead and bubble towards this Fortizar, that's a screen bubble. You can go ahead and hover 30 km away from your friendly fleet when they're doing like boring shit and they think that you're gonna have bombers dropped on you. 45 km if you're gonna go ahead and try and be sneaky. But the idea is that if you're 45 km away, like either up or to the side from your fleet, if they send in bombers, you can bubble their bombers, and because they're not expecting it, you can delay bubble them, and then their speed goes to 0 when they try to warp out, and then they all die. Because everyone tries to shoot the bombers. If the bombers die, none of the bombs go off, everyone wins. You could see how that could be a huge advantage. Anyway, being at 75 km away, I'm kind of useless to this capital other than doing the screen bubbly. So that's why your perches make a lot of difference. I might go ahead and bookmark this screen bubble location as well, so I can go ahead and warp back to it. Now, granted, you don't have to name these things fancy because you're just doing it in a super hurry. You can see that on an overview. So right now, I'm at a perch right now. So everyone can go ahead and warp down to the perch. Active. You can warp to me. I don't have a document with the recommended distances. You just kind of got a feel for it. I usually keep my keep it range at 25. Here, I'll put it in. I put my keep it range at this. This makes sure you can stay close enough that you can bridge, that you can go ahead and open cans, that you can go ahead and use gates, etc. But you're far enough away that you can go ahead and still cloak up. Being able to cloak is extremely important. My orbit distance I usually put at 6,500. Just because with your prop mod on, that gets you to the 9K thing. And then if you keep it off, then you're at perfect damage distance. So then I can go ahead and warp back from my perch, back up to my stop bubble, where I'm going to go ahead and do screen bubbling to prevent this capital from getting further assistance, because he's in siege and I don't want him getting further assistance. Granted, they can get around a screen bubble pretty easily. Usually what they'll do is they'll just warp an interceptor at range on the field, or warp at a different location with an interceptor, and then warp to that interceptor. Interceptors are kind of your worst nightmare. Realize you can kill a lot of different interceptors. There's some that are extremely tough. Don't go in against a Dramiel. Don't go in against a Daredevil. Those guys can fuck you up. But Malediction you can sometimes kill. Maledictions can be extremely tanked. Tyrannuses avoid and if they are blaster fit. You can kind of tell if they're blaster fit by what range they want to dictate. So if they're railgun fit, you can still outdamage them. So okay, and then this is the idea of the bookmarking to go ahead and make sure that you're in the right location. The skill plans involved: evasive maneuvering 5, command destroy or interdictors, which takes forever. I mean, it takes a long time to train this stuff. I'm not gonna josh you. It's 6 months of training to go ahead and fly this particular fit. You do not need the guns, as I said. You can use the T1, but realize you will only be able to go ahead and use garbage ammo. You can use EMP, but realize EMP kind of really falls off past about 4K. If you're orbiting at 4K, you will get webbed, you will die. So the only reason I like the 9K one is that way you have the option of burning out within like 3 seconds. You can burn out even with your if they kill your Microwarpdrive and they web you, then you're kind of fucked. But you can at least have a chance to slingshot out of range. So any more questions? I have plenty of time for questions here. There is more details in that forum thread I linked. Has a lot of the details we talked about kind of in general. It has the fit in there. It has a video on choosing a specialization and why you want to choose a specialization. It's a presentation I did to CCP, to eVegas last year. Are there any other questions? Is there anything in here I didn't go over? Oh, predicting the FC. This is where things start to get spooky. Large fleets follow predictable patterns. They are trying to find the enemy fleet. They are running away from the enemy fleet. They are warping in and engaging at 0. There should always be something for you to do in these instances. If they're searching for the enemy fleet, you're out there looking for it. You're giving intel. You're cloaked up near them. There's a lot of things you can do. If they are chasing this enemy fleet, you can bubble them, and then you might die. Realize basically once a fleet gets past about, I want to say 70 people or something like that, there's a really good chance you're going to die if you try and bubble them at 0. You can go ahead and bubble them and then burn off your bubble. Realize that if you drop an interdictor bubble, so everyone go ahead and burn off. Burn off. Burn off just means put your Microwarpdrive in a random direction. Someone pick up my can? I guess they did. No, never mind. Okay, everyone go ahead and hit Control Space. That does stop your ship. Let me know when you guys, I'm watching, you guys can come to a complete stop. Okay, once you're stopped, go ahead and everyone who can drop a bubble, go ahead and drop a bubble and cloak. Okay, go ahead and cloak up. Cloak up. Cloak up. There you go. Darius got it. Yeah, the double cloak is really, really painful. If you double tap cloak, you're fucked. That's what I did when I first jumped in and you guys tried to catch me, is I double spam cloak. Realize you have to be 2 km away from your thing. Once you guys are go ahead and decloak and lock me up. Decloak, lock me up. There is a delay on locking after using your cloak. If you look on your ship in Control Alt F, you can see the sensor recalibration time. That is 15 seconds. You can drop it by using an improved one, but because it uses 60 CPU, it is really hard to fit. I mean, it's incredibly hard to fit just because it's so much CPU. You can do it, but then your recalibration time drops to about, I think, 12 seconds or something like that. Your reactivation delay is still 30 seconds though, so you're still kind of fucked and hanging out in space there with your dick hanging out. So, and once again, you're trying to escape at that point, and you're bookmarking as you're leaving, so you can come back to exactly where you were, etc. So you get kind of used to hitting Control B as you're running away. Otherwise, you're like, where are they again? Where are they again? And you're waiting for people to try and tell you, and etc. Now, if you look at these bubbles that we have around here, none of them are towards celestials, so none of these help. Someone could warp directly on top of your FCB without being touched because there's no protection from anywhere. And now that it's been 2 minutes, they're gone. So knowing that kind of 2 minute cycle really helps. Reloading your launcher is 1 minute. So you can kind of use that as your gauge if that's the halfway mark. I generally try and do the reload on the second bubble I launch. That way I still have one left. And if I need, I will sometimes not do it. I just don't want to be completely out if I need it. So I'll make sure that I have the 1 minute to go ahead and kill. So, because it's better to have 3 bubbles and be ready to bubble the next group. So having just 1 bubble can be extremely painful from time to time. Are there any more questions about any of the topics we went over? Choices in ships or fittings or anything like that? Okay. I think that's it, guys. We're going to go ahead and burn back at this point. We are just like a jump bridge away, I believe. So I can go ahead and warp the fleet to here.
Warp drive active.
Knowing when to go ahead and break a fleet in half. If you're able to go ahead and catch them as they're warping off a gate, for instance. Extremely damaging. It's a lot of fun. And the key is to go ahead and communicate with your FC and tell them when you're doing stuff. If they have supers or capitals involved, be very careful about bubbling. If you bubble when capitals are involved and they didn't want bubbles, they're going to be very mad at you and might think you're a spy, etc. So just be careful when you're doing this stuff. Learn your FCs. Know the ones that are comfortable with you doing stuff independently. Know which ones really want complete and utter domination of everything you're doing. So everyone can jump into BGM. We're going to do one other thing here. I would like everyone to go ahead and warp to R10, and we're going to go ahead and kill the rats here. Just to show you guys, go ahead and switch to fusion or some cheap ammo or something like that. We're going to go ahead and kill this battleship right now first. You can use whatever ammo. Yes, I know, everything's very mad. This is just kind of to show you that you can actually rat in a Sabre. One Sabre can go ahead and kill quite a few rats, and you can see how kind of quickly this is melting under... This is 5 Sabres and 3 Cormorants, 2 Cormorants. You can see how quickly some of these things can melt. So, and it can be even better if you're using decent ammo. I'm using off-type ammo, etc. Whoever's getting shot, you should go ahead and be able to go ahead and tank this as long as you go ahead and keep a speed up. We'll go ahead and kill, I guess, the other guy too. I'm not gonna kill Allard. So go ahead and just kill the drone, kill the rats. Realize that rats on a gate can really fuck you up if you have to sit there for a while because they lock you when you need the cloak. And rats have killed me several times because they've decloaked me. If they're using drifter holes, those guys can really fuck you up. Do not try to warp off a drifter hole in a Sabre. They will lock you. They will one-shot you. It sucks. But normal rats, you can go ahead and totally kill at will. as long as you have the time to go ahead and do it. If you have someone helping you, realize that it's very hard to kill a small bubble by yourself in a Sabre, but it is doable. It is impossible to kill a large bubble without help. So you can see how far away that we can operate and deal with these things. The other thing, by the way, the other things that can go ahead and get rid of your bubbles besides docking, command destroyers, aka boosters, can also use their boost ability on it, and they can go ahead and boost your bubble off. A bomber will one-shot it. Four large smart bombs activations will go ahead and do it. It's only 1,000 hit points, so anything that can do 1,000 hit points will kill the bubble. Now, granted, they can't target it, so they gotta kind of free burn. Everyone, go ahead and get on the gate now. So you can see how quick a work we just went ahead and made of, 2 battleship rats and 2 cruiser rats, and they did all of 200 damage to me in that same amount of time. So, and that took 2 minutes to kill that many rats. So, anyway, any other questions? I'm here at your guys' disposal. There's lots of things you could ask. This is extremely hard. Don't let anyone ever tell you differently. It just takes time, effort, practice, and patience. You can use open broadcasting system. What is it called? OBS to record yourself. I recommend it. It's really easy to use. It's what you use for Twitch streaming and stuff like that, and you can record with that. So, yeah. That's just the role specialization one, or which one? The role specialization is just to say it's better to fly one ship really well than fly all the ships very shittily, because that's what I used to do. I can fly every ship in the game, but I specialize in Dictors because a Dictor is always needed. Good Dictors are hard to find, and it's just something I happen to be good at because I'm good at the spatial stuff. So. Yeah, in that video, I tell you this is how you can go ahead and try it out on a small scale. The Dictor is one of the few ships you can't really small scale test it out because there's no other ship like it. So, unfortunately. Yeah, autocannons are the best of the weapons for the small ones, other than possibly blasters. Blasters are really good for short range, but autocannons are like so flexible because you can go ahead and put Barrage in it, or you can put Republic Fleet MP. Yeah, you want to stop fleets at 75 km because it's halfway between them burning off, and also you can catch them on both sides, and they're fucked on both sides. So basically, I'm trying to think the best way to go ahead and demonstrate this. Give me a second here. Go ahead and jump into R10. Yeah, so you're going to basically do 20 km for your bubble size. If you guys can burn to the back side of the gate away from the sun, burn away from the sun. If you guys want to, practice setting up a drag bubble and lining up the shot, you're welcome to try and line up the shot. So if I go ahead and drop a bubble here, and the enemy fleet is over where you guys are, basically I can catch the enemy fleet trying to warp this way. I can prevent them from going out. If they warp off and warp towards any of the planets towards the center, they're going to get caught in my bubble. So they're going to go ahead and be stuck either way. This is why that distance is so kind of magical, because they're going to land 50 km. So trees, if you go ahead and warp to me, 0. Nice bubble, nice bubble. So you go ahead and burn out of the bubble, guys, and warp to me. Realize you have to be 150 km, so you kind of got to go ahead and do some 3D math to go ahead and do it correctly. Realize it can't interdict your path, so burning past it sucks. Burning to the side or up is better. Up is better because less people are going to land on you. You can see Darius managed to get to me first. If anyone warps from the sun or from... Hold on, let me go ahead and make sure I'm doing this correctly. No, good. I did it out of line of the keep star. But basically, this makes sure that anyone coming from the sun or from any other gates, etc., hopefully will go ahead and get caught in my bubble from either side. So bubble placement, it just takes practice, effort, doing a little bit of 3D math associated with where they might be coming from, predicting where they're going to come from, predicting how many they're going to be. And if there are too many, what am I going to do? I'm going to cloak up so I can go ahead and stay alive. Any other questions? Okay, guys, I think that's it. Thank you for coming. If you have any other questions, feel free to hit me up on Discord. I'm super easy to find. The bubble should be dropping, so yeah, there it goes. And anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have anything you think of that I think you should add to this, feel free to ask me. I will consider, I'm going to look at putting the ranges in there. That's a really good idea. And then I'm most likely to run this class again in like a month or two. And hopefully some of you should be trained into Dictors at that point. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me.
Active.
Thanks for coming. Sure thing.